Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hey, Paul, welcome back. How are you?
Good to see you again, Vic.
Good to see you. It doesn't seem like it's been, 6 months since the last episode. It's been quite a while.
Yeah.
Took a hot minute. Cool. Hey, for the audience, if you didn't meet Paul from the prior episode, Paul's friend, they'll let her introduce himself here a second. Paul's an oil and gas executive, knows the energy space well. So, Paul, just refresh the audience real quick with who you are.
I'm Paul Treadwell. I'm COO at a company called Formentera Partners. Formerly I was with Parsley Energy. I co-founded that company and we took it public. And we started that company in 2008, took it public in 2014. Built a pretty good sized company, sold it for $7.5 billion to Pioneer Natural Resources in 2021. And then my partner and I that started Parsley Energy, along with a guy that helped take us public, he worked at Credit Suisse, started another one a couple of months after we sold. So I'm back in the game again, and this time we're private. I don't think we're going to go public, but as fast as we're going, that could be a possibility. So.
Well, as they said in The Godfather, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Yeah.
So that's good. Yeah. Well, you're still smiling, Paul. So it must be a good fun run. Hey, I've been my business. We've been getting a little bit more entrenched in what's going on in the data center space. And there was an article published that actually I didn't know the count. There are just north of 11,000 data centers in the world. 11,300 something. I forget the exact number. Yeah, that's what I thought. It was small. But what shocked me most is north of 5,000 of them are in the United States. Mm-hmm. So pretty close to half the data centers in the world are in the U.S. That was a bit of a mind blower for me. That was a lot. And I've been getting far more entrenched in getting connectivity to these data centers, the new sites that are coming up. I met somebody through the business who's been doing work in the data center space for 30 years who got me plugged into this community, and I could bring, the connectivity to these places. And it dawned on me through all the conversations that I was having about it. So I don't know anything about what the heck we're going to do for power for these places. I hear rumors about, what Gates and Microsoft are doing. I hear about, nuclear coming back online in certain places. I know you're in oil and gas and energy, and I figured, hey, let's get Paul on the line here and talk about it. So, what do you know about what we're doing to create more energy in the United States, maybe even across the world?
Yeah, for us, the big thing that we're pushing more than anything that we didn't do at Parsley Energy is natural gas. That is, I think, our greatest resource. It's Marcellus Shale up in Pennsylvania is probably the biggest area for that. They're producing 35 BCF a day there. And
help the audience understand what that means. Like, tell me what somebody does with a BCF. What's that equate to?
Billion cubic feet of gas. So it's substantial. They're the biggest producer in the United States in that region, but their constraints are pipeline constraints associated with political issues.
Okay.
For us in Texas, we're flaring or venting quite a bit of our gas just due to infrastructure constraints, but there's a lot of being built. So, there's a lot of available gas to do that. So from an energy perspective, there's a substantial amount of resource there. So much so that some companies, and there's data centers being built extensively out in the Permian. But there's some companies who are currently, and when I say companies, oil and gas companies who are utilizing that excess gas if they're not able to get to the market to power data centers, which is a great clean fuel. Electrical infrastructure, it's pretty good out in the Permian Basin, but with the amount of power that's required for those and the time constraints to build substations and additional infrastructure, it just makes sense to utilize what you have already in terms of gas to fuel, quote unquote, fuel these data centers for power. And it's a clean, and with, even though a lot of the ESG movement is starting to subside, it is a clean source of energy. So that's one of the things that's going on out in the Permian. And, to that end, the amount of data centers that are being built out in West Texas is pretty substantial. We have a company that does all of our contracts, electrical contracts through our electrical providers. And I talked to them the other day, and they said they're building, they also do infrastructure builds, and they're building a lot of substations just for AI data centers. I was just telling you a place that I had that, they're my own personal place that I own. I'm being bought out by one of the energy companies, and they build wind turbines and solar farms, and they're not going to do that. They're going to do AI data centers on some land that I had. For us, on the Permian, natural gas is the way to go. If you're looking for additional energy, quick energy. One of the things I have heard too is one of the companies that's doing natural gas for AI data centers is also looking at bringing in small nuclear reactors in that region as well. So that's another source of energy that seems to be out of the box for that area.
Yeah, big time.
Around Glen Rose, just south of you, there's a nuclear power plant. But it's interesting that they're looking at bringing in small nuclear reactors and building those to power these AI data centers.
What do you know about the speculation that they're going to do something with these small nuclear things, but there's some engineering about sinking it deeper into the earth? Is there anything to that? I heard it secondhand. I didn't know if you knew anything about it. Yeah.
I don't know that you could do that in and around Midland, Odessa, just with the amount of infrastructure and the amount of wells that have been drilled. Certainly it sounds like a feasible option, but I'm not sure.
Sounds like a bad one to me. If it goes bad, you're going to contaminate everything under the ground.
Yeah.
Water, and it'll be a disaster.
Yeah, there's already some contamination issues with the groundwater in that area. Just there's producing, hundreds of thousands of wells.
What, tell me, in terms of a billion cubic feet, if I had 1 billion cubic feet of gas, what does that power? Trying to translate, say they're doing 1 billion a day. How much electricity can I create with 1 billion cubic feet of gas?
I think that I heard an executive just the other day say that was enough to supply the city of New York for a few days. But it's pretty substantial.
It's substantial.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of energy. And that's, they're having issues getting gas to New York, because they don't want that type of fossil fuel coming into the region. So a lot of what they have, New York's got the Marcellus gas play in it as well. It's substantial, but they're not able to sell gas like they need to in that area. That's just through the government regulations. And it's just not, at some point they're going to have to turn that direction. You're seeing that in Europe. They went green energy several years ago, and now it's coming to fruition where they're hurting for gas, and they're looking for sources of energy and it's to the point where they've deindustrialized their nation, and they're hurting for for energy. So you see that with what's going on in that region, just for gas pipelines that are coming through there, or were going through there, but there's wars being fought over that.
Oh yeah, big time.
And so I think that they're rethinking that, and they're looking for alternative sources, but it's a really touchy subject for that region. Whereas we went the other direction, and now we're the powerhouse in the world. We're making 30 million barrels equivalent of production per day. And when you look at Saudi Arabia and Russia, that's more than those two combined.
Wow, that's amazing.
So we're an energy leader by going the direction that we went. So it's substantial, and we're energy independent, and it's from a security standpoint, we're probably one of the most secure nations in the world because of it.
That's comforting. That's a good thing.
Yeah, energy is power in terms of revenue and resource and the ability to negotiate with nations. And so from that standpoint, we can be proud of the nation that we're in because we went the other way versus what Europe has done.
So walk me through, how do you get gas out of the ground?
So it's going back to the fundamentals of it.
Yeah.
You have to have a resource. So you have to have a place somewhere where the geology is conducive for it. And again, Pennsylvania is one of those areas. Obviously, Texas is. But gas in certain geologies is just naturally occurring, and it's all dry. So we have some production in Pennsylvania, and it's just, when I say dry, there's no oil or any fluids associated with it. It's just naturally occurring dry gas. And we drill a well into the geology that we've identified, and we frack it and start producing it.
Mm-hmm.
Permian, you have oil and gas and water. So you've got three types of resources there. And obviously water's worthless. So you re-inject that back into the ground. But the oil and the gas come with it, and you sell the oil and the gas. You process it and sell it as well. The oil and gas wells that we drill out in the Permian, over time, oil will decline and your gas actually increases. That's called the GOR. So your gas oil ratio increases over time. And doesn't necessarily mean your gas is increasing. It's just that the ratio increases. So you're making a lot of gas. It's still going to decline, but the ratio is such that you've got an additional resource there of gas that you need to sell and get rid of. And there's so much of it in the Permian, it's hard to sell all of it just because the pipeline infrastructure is not quite there. But the market is so saturated in certain areas, Vic, we don't make any money off of gas whatsoever because number one, it's plentiful, and number two, there's nowhere to take the gas. So when the Biden administration shut down the LNG exports that were going to go out of Louisiana,
mm-hmm.
it really put a damper on a lot of what was going on in terms of marketing and pushing that gas to export. So he had no idea, apparently, it looked like that was going on. That it was said that he did that, but he denies that was the case.
Interesting.
Senator Johnson or Speaker of the House Johnson asked him about it. And here recently, he spoke about that. And it was interesting to see that our president didn't know anything about it.
But, maybe he just forgot.
Yeah.
But
the LNG market is pretty substantial. Now, in Australia, we are participating in a joint venture there where we are drilling in the Northern Territory, and it's dry gas, but the market for us there is the Asian market, LNG market. Several companies have put in LNG ports to ship gas to Asia. Right now, I think our gas is running about $2 to $3 an MCF. That's 1,000 cubic feet. in the Asian market, it's $9. So you can see where the cost, albeit very expensive to drill and complete a well there, the revenue that you would get from the sale and marketing of gas to Asia is pretty substantial. They're hungry for energy as well.
How is it stored and shipped?
It's stored in tankers. It's converted and liquefied and stored in tankers and pressurized tanks and shipped.
When it's liquefied, what happens on the other side when somebody receives it?
So it's processed, and then they deliquefy it and turn it back into a vapor that they can then sell and use for
quite a bit of science to it.
Yeah. But it's processed and it's clean. But it's plentiful when it's liquefied like that. It's compressed and it's pretty substantial amount that can be used for anything. It can be used for heating or industrial. Mainly industrial is what I think Asia's needing it for. Australia, there's some political things that are going on there. I think they've denied, Sydney and Melbourne have denied any kind of new infrastructure associated with natural gas and any of their new buildings and homes. I think that's going to be a detriment to them, just like it's gone on in Europe in the coming years, and because they have a great resource there that they need to utilize. But most of that gas is going away from Australia to other markets.
No kidding. So when you, let's go back to the geology of it all. When you guys are out trying to find a site, at a fourth grade level here, although I have a very smart audience, we like things simple. At a fourth grade level, you're like, okay, how do you hear about a site? Are there independent geology studies going on that you get access to? Like, how do you determine where you're going to go and where your next opportunity is for exploration?
We really don't do any exploration. These are proven areas that we're buying.
Okay.
Have production for years. Pennsylvania is the oldest producing area in the nation. But yeah, all the areas that we're in have been proven for 40 or 50 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we're just buying proven areas. We don't do any exploratory work. So it's one of those things where we're either buying out somebody that's selling or acquiring something that they've made their money back for their investors, and now they're flipping it's what we call it. Buying a home, you remodel it and flip, make a spread on it. They're doing that. Then we take it and do the same thing. We'll drill a few wells on it, but most of the time we just produce what's there and maybe a little bit of development operations in the future there. But gas is pricing is so low right now. We're probably not going to be doing any drilling in the Marcellus. Now we're drilling in South Texas and out in West Texas and Oklahoma and North Dakota. Those areas are oily, is what we call it. A lot of prices pretty decent. So that's kind of where our market is right now.
Sweet. What's the overall production for your company from a gas perspective per day?
Right now we're about, I think we're probably 100 million a day. That's not anywhere close to a BCF of any kind. And then we're about 50,000 barrels a day. When we sold Parsley Energy, we were about 250,000 barrels a day. So,
okay.
We're not as large and substantial as we were at Parsley, but we're growing.
Yeah, that's cool.
For a few years.
What's on the horizon from a growth perspective? Do you have other sites and other takeovers or other opportunities in the market to get the next flips big?
Yeah, certainly. So we see stuff every day. We've probably bid on a couple of hundred projects, and I think we've won about 7 or 8. So it's highly competitive. But the market is full of places that people are selling, and they get it to a certain point and they've gotten their return for their investors, particularly on the private equity side. And when private equity makes their money back for their investors and there's a decent return that they have modeled and they've hit that hurdle, so to speak, and it's time to sell. And a lot of times they'll put it on the market through a bank, Wells Fargo or Bank of America or somebody like that.
Yep.
They'll put it out to market and they'll pitch it to us. We'll get a pitch book and we'll look at it. We pass on a lot of things, but there's certain things that fit our profile of what we're looking for. And then we'll work on it for about a month and do our own economic modeling. And then there's a bid date due. Most of those, it's around 45 days after it's put to market. And we'll look at it pretty heavily. And if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. We lose a lot. But we are pretty conservative in our approach on how we model. So we tend to discount what they put out pretty heavily. And as such, we lose a lot. But, for us, we want to get the best return for our investors. And what we have won is pretty substantial in terms of return. So we're doing well.
Awesome. I want to flip over to something a little lighter, but same topic. You watching Landman?
Yes.
You can't avoid that, can you?
Yeah.
I knew the answer to that, right? The reason Paul knows that I know that he's already watching Landman is because on the first episode, he's texting me right away, "You watching Landman? Let me give you some behind the scenes." That kind of happened to me. Right? So I was getting all that stuff. But I mean, how accurate are the depictions of what's going on in Midland out there, Yeah. How much is Hollywood? How much is Taylor Sheridan? And how much is, close enough?
I will say this. It is very entertaining. It is very entertaining. And I'm inundated with people asking me questions about it.
Yep.
How much they love it. And that's great.
What part is real, though? I think there is a woman out there who's blonde and very attractive and taking senior citizens to strip clubs. I heard that's actually... No, it is entertaining.
A little bit of truth to some of that.
Okay.
Taking stories and embellishing them for the show entertainment value. And that's great. But, for us in our industry, a landman isn't what Billy Bob Thornton is. What Billy Bob Thornton is a production operations guy.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense to name a show Production Operations Man.
Yeah, you got Landman's a much better name.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was a landman, an actual landman. Yeah. His name was Walter Beams. Walter was a great guy. He's passed away a year and a half ago, but he was a true landman. Did all the title search. Well, why don't you explain to the audience what a landman does?
I mean, you nailed it. That's what they do. They go out and try to acquire land and for my group to drill on. But that's what a true landman is. What Billy Bob Thornton's doing is actually operations.
Yeah, he's an operations manager.
A lot of what he's doing, just from, the scenes where they're with the cartel.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Oh, damn it. You beat me too. I was going to say, does that stuff happen? I mean, is the cartel coming out?
No, I actually started out in what he's doing and what the prior company and everything that he was doing. I was handling all that. So I know that quite well. Never had that happen. I had to deal with surface owners a lot and, you're infringing on their property, and most of the landowners, the surface owners, they don't have minimums. So it's very difficult for them to have someone come in and you're destroying their property for quite some time. So and I grew up farming and ranching. That's my background as a young person. So I'm able to have sympathy for them and what we're doing. But oil and gas supersedes landowners' rights. And
Let me take the audience back a second, because I'm gonna catch people up to what I know. So I grew up in the Northeast, grew up in an apartment building. Weren't a property owner. My family, when I was in the 8th grade, bought a house in New Jersey. We moved out. We had a third of an acre, right? Nobody was interested in mineral rights, and I didn't think it was ever discussed. Then I moved to Colorado, and then in 2008, I moved to Texas. And so was it 2008? It was 2007. Actually, it was 2007. I moved to Texas. And I'm here, I don't know, 6 months. And now gas is, starting to go up in price, and things are happening in late 2007. And all of a sudden I get a letter in the mail from the Homeowners Association. It says, hey, we've negotiated with a company who wants to buy their mineral rights underneath the entire community that we live in. And we've come to terms where they're going to drill, like way off site. And, they go down, they go sideways, and they're going to tap in. And we've negotiated a price based upon everybody's, deal here. And do you want to sell mineral rights for 3 years? Because in this community, we own our mineral rights, right? Who's going to drill here? I live on a golf course, And so I'm like, what the heck is this? Mineral rights? I mean, who the heck knows about mineral rights? I mean, were there mineral rights under the apartment building? I grew up in New York. Maybe there were, but, I never heard about it. All I could tell you is that I go to the one of the community buildings. I pick up my packet. I bring it home. I read it. It's pretty straightforward. Basically says, you're going to get a check for this much. It's for the mineral rights for 3 years. And if they hit gas, you're going to get a little piece of production. Who knows what it meant? But all I could tell you is I got a check for 10 grand. Okay.
That's great.
You've been to my house, right? Yeah. I live it's a small piece of property. Nice thing is I back up to 500 yards of golf course that I don't have to mow. And I got a check for 10 grand. And so I said to my wife, hey, put 4,000 down, put 4,000 away for the tax man. I'm going to the Apple store. We all need new computers. I spent every penny of that 6 grand, Paul, on all new Mac gear, because we were due. Like, we were really due for new stuff. Well, about a week after I bought all the stuff, like, there was a discrepancy between the oil and gas company that bought the mineral rights and how they were going to do the processing and where they were going to drill. They wanted to change the rules of the road in the middle of it all. And the association's attorney said, no, this is what you signed. This is what you do. Well, not everybody in the community got to the clubhouse as quickly as I did to go get my paperwork. So they were about a third of the way through the community, and 2/3 hadn't signed or hadn't received any money yet, and they stopped. And then it took some time for them to figure out how they were going to access it, where they were going to drill, what they were going to do. And in that time frame, gas got real cheap. That took, a year or so or whatever, and gas got cheap, and they were like, we're not drilling. Yeah. Obviously, that 3-year lease has expired. But that was my first introduction to understanding what mineral rights are. So now that I laid that silly story out for the audience, so when you go to a piece of property and somebody else aside from the surface owner has the mineral rights, let's say I own 100 acres, all the surface is mine, but somebody else owns the mineral rights, and the mineral owner sells you the mineral rights. What does that mean to the surface owner? Can you just go on that property and erect a well and start drilling from their surface all the way down? How does that work?
Yeah, typically mineral owners won't sell you their minerals. They're by and large tied up in either someone actually owns it, or they're tied up in a family trust, and families own them. You can buy minerals. There are companies that's all they do. They're like us. They just buy minerals, and they're at the mercy of an oil and gas operator hoping that they'll drill on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if you own some minerals, and it looks like you do, underneath your home, and when gas prices get to a certain price where it makes it economic for someone to drill, they can drill horizontally under your neighborhood. And we did that in Midland. We drilled under the city, 2 miles under the city.
Wow.
And every homeowner that was vertically above our horizontal well we were drilling, we had to contact. And that was what our landman did.
Wow.
He contacted every single one of them. And some of those people did have the minerals. Some of them did not.
Okay.
You had some people that had quarter-acre lots that were getting checks because we had some really great wells. This one itself, we drilled underneath their golf course, and the city golf course was the benefit of that to some degree. They had built 9 holes, additional holes about 10 years ago, and we're still $3 million in the hole on that. They were able to pay that off and do some improvements, so much so that the city decided to take those funds that they were getting from the golf course, because everything was done, and they refurbed a lot of their city parks with those funds. So there's a lot of good that comes out of it. It provided jobs. It provided the ability to revamp some parks for kids that needed it. I mean, there was one city park there that I remember playing in, and that when I was a kid, 1973, that had never been refurbished.
Wow.
And now it looks amazing.
Amazing.
But yes, it's you in the state of Texas. I mean, it's a little different in each state, but in the state of Texas, we have the right to just go in on a surface owner, and it's difficult sometimes. We try to be as accommodating as we can and take care of the surface owner as much as possible. And we have to pay damages. We pay that, and that's negotiated. But, and then there's certain companies, we had one particular area we were going to drill on where a guy had just purchased the majority of the surface, and he was going to put a whole new subdivision in. And then all of a sudden we're coming in, and we had to move quickly, because once he starts erecting things and doing construction, he can shut us down. But we moved a little faster than he did. We had to do some negotiating there. Those kind of things happen pretty often.
So let me just repaint the picture. I own 500 acres in the middle of somewhere. I do not own the minerals. You have access to the minerals, and you've determined the place to start going down to then go sideways is on my 500 acres.
Correct.
Okay. Because at some point you got to go down before you go sideways, right?
Correct.
Okay. You determine that my 500 acres where that has to happen. Okay. Can't come in from the left, the right, the front, the back. You got to go down on my spot. The law says that you can just come and tell me you're drilling down on my property because you own the minerals.
Correct.
Wow. That's pretty incredible.
And our footprint, on one location can be about 5 acres.
That's big.
It's big. Yes. It's substantial.
That's big.
That's just one location. So if it's determined that there's a substantial amount of production there, we could actually take over your whole 500 acres eventually.
What if I have a home on the property?
Well, we'll work around the home. You'll still get to keep home.
Yeah.
But you'll have production around you.
Wow. And there's nothing I can do to stop it.
No, there's not.
Wow. That's amazing.
You have to build relationships with surface owners, because it is disconcerting for them. And a lot of times it's very disappointing to them. Now we have some surface owners who have enough land that we can drill what's called a saltwater disposal on them, and they get on those things because it's not really a mineral situation.
Mm-hmm.
They can make a lot of money off of that. We had one particular surface owner who we probably paid him over the course of a couple of years $2 or $3 million. in damages and water injection, disposing of water from produced wells. So he quite a bit of money off of that, and still to this day is making money off the saltwater disposal well. Now
tell me more about that. What does that exactly mean? What does it do, and what is he being compensated for that?
So typically a surface owner will still own some subsurface. So he has water rights. So there's water wells that he's drilled out there for either his farming or his ranching, or maybe just for his home. You drill a little deeper. I say a little, it's a couple thousand feet deeper. And you can dispose of produced water and approved. Now, these are approved by the state of Texas, by the Railroad Commission. And you can drill into those zones, and you can take water that you're producing from an oil and gas well, which is just essentially it's a fluid that you don't want anymore. I'm trying to break it down in the simplest terms. It's most of the time it's salt water. And you dispose of it, and you have a facility above ground that injects that water back into the ground, and you pay him because you're drilling on his property. You negotiate a rate with him, and it can be as much as 50 cents to $1 a barrel. And when you're injecting 5,000 or 6,000 barrels a day, depending on what your permit allows, it can be as much as 10,000 barrels a day. That's a lot of money that he's making on a daily basis. It's essentially mailbox money.
Yeah, big time.
And you can have investors in that. I used to be invested in saltwater disposal wells.
You got to come out to Moran and see if we got any drill opportunities out there on my 4 acres. I'm an acre short, but we'll make it work.
Yeah, that area, it probably back in the 50s, it had some production, but it's...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's probably pretty weak nowadays.
It's toast. Yeah, there's not much out there. There's a lot of hogs. There's a good amount of deer. Yeah. Not as many hogs you have, according to your cameras, but wow.
Yeah. Brutal.
Holy mackerel, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right, so when you drill down, how far, so if you say you're going underneath the subdivision, how far under the surface are you when you're starting to go parallel to the ground?
In the Permian Basin, we'll drill down to about 9,000 feet for the zones that we're going at, and we'll drill vertically 9,000 feet, and then we'll go horizontally 2 miles. There are some 3-mile wells there, but typically we go 2 miles.
So if you're drilling under me, you're 9,000 feet below me.
9,000 feet below you.
Wow. Is that common? Is that shallow? Is that deep?
Common. There's a new play out in that region where you're going another 2,000 feet. So you're going 11,000 feet vertically and then another 2 miles horizontally. So that's the common misnomer is particularly here in Austin. I've had this happen a few times where people say, "Oh, you're one of those guys that poisons our water," and then you tell them that you're running 3 strings of casing. So you got surface casing that goes down to your protected water zones, and then you cement that in, and that's typically around, that casing is about 23 to 24 pounds per foot. And then you've got intermediate casing that goes down to about 9,000 feet. And that's
the dimension of the first casing.
It depends. It can be anywhere from 13 5/8 to 20 inch. And then your next is, typically around 7 inch to 8 5/8, maybe 9 5/8. And then your production casing inside of that is 5.5. And it's typically around 20 pound casing, 20 pounds per foot. So pretty heavy, pretty thick. And then you have a cement sheet between each one. So your water zones are highly protected, and you're at 9,000 feet before you kick off and go horizontally 2 miles. So, if you think about I'm trying to break it down in simplest terms.
Yeah, that's cool. This is great.
That I was talking to about this, I said, so you understand pressure. If you were to dive into and go scuba diving, what would happen to your body at 1,000 feet? She said, well, I'd be crushed. And I said, exactly. Mm-hmm. So 9,000 feet and it's rock. How are we going to poison the water? And she goes, well, I've never had anybody explain it like that. And so, when you're at those depths and you're going horizontally 2 miles, it's very difficult and just all the regulatory things that we do to protect subsurface water. It's very difficult. Now, it wasn't quite that, well engineered back in the 30s and 40s like it is now, but, yeah, it's almost impossible to contaminate water like that. Because your fresh water.
When did the horizontal drilling start?
I remember when I was at Pioneer Natural Resources, we drilled some really short laterals back in the 90s with not much success just because of the technology and it was difficult. But it really took off in 2007 with a company called EOG on the Permian. And then we started doing it ourselves in 2010, but there were other companies prior to us. So the explosion of it, so to speak, of horizontal drilling really started in 2009, 2010 time frame. That's really took off. And just the efficiency of drilling those really took off. It was taking 30 to 40 days to drill one of those wells, and now they can do it in about 15 to 20.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the efficiency gains are tremendous. There's not as many rigs running just because you can drill so much more efficient. And the same thing on frac crews. There's not as much. We're so efficient at fracking now. You just don't need as many frac companies and they're struggling to find work because we're becoming more and more efficient. Doesn't mean we're still drilling a lot, still doing a lot of completions, but the efficiency gains are so tremendous that you just don't need as much equipment anymore.
What does the technology involved look like that you're 9,000 feet down and all of a sudden you can make a left turn?
It's called a rotary steerable, or it's called measuring while drilling, an MWD. But you have a rotary steerable tool that has some technology and software in it to direct you in the direction you need to go. There's a lot of calculations involved in that, a lot of software involved, but it sends a signal downhole and tells it, and then that signal comes back to the surface, and you're able to actually geosteer. It's called geosteering. You can steer that equipment and stay in zone. And so you can see the zone. You're seeing the zone that you're in, and that information is coming back to the surface, so you can actually stay in zone and steer it.
So when you're 9,000, some cases 11,000 feet down, you have all this casing that you just described. But once I make a left or a right, what do I have? I got nothing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going into the earth. Mm-hmm. What's the earth like down there?
It's extremely hard rock. It's called shale.
Okay.
Now there are some sand zones that are sand, and that's typically a lot shallower, but it's shale. It's a very hard looking rock. I guess the best way to describe it would be, in its simplest terms, if you looked at granite on your countertop, and it would look something like that.
Really? That hard?
Form, yeah.
Okay.
Just like that. And it's hard to believe, but when you take that rock and put it in a lab and apply pressure to it, you can oil droplets start coming out of it. Not really granted, but if that rock, they take core samples and they take it to a lab and they do some analysis on it. It's pretty amazing how much oil is in the ground.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Just a big pool down.
No, you're not just,
That's why you have to frack it. You're pumping sand and fluids into that rock and there's already some micro fissures there, but you're just opening up those fissures and allowing that oil to flow freely by pumping frack and frack fluids.
When you're drilling, you're pumping the stuff you're drilling out, right?
Yeah, you're drilling the rock and you're circulating that back to the surface.
Okay. Then what do you do with that stuff?
So that stuff goes to a pit, and then that pit is buried. Those cuttings are called cuttings, and they're actually buried.
Nice. When you go sideways, you're still sucking that stuff out?
You're still drilling it out, yeah.
Yeah, you're still drilling it out, and you're pumping it up 9 to 11,000 feet.
Yes. So you use drilling mud. So drilling mud has viscosity and it's able, and you have it at a certain weight, and you have to maintain that weight because it gets cut. Your mud, when I say cut, it gets thinned out by the fluids that come back through that formation. So you have what's called a mud man on location who actually monitors that. He has his own little lab, and he's ensuring that mud is a certain weight so that it has the carrying capacity. Otherwise, just through gravity, those cuttings will try to fall. And if fall on your equipment through the hole while you're drilling, you can get stuck. It'll just pop. You got to keep it circulating and keep it moving up to the surface.
When you're establishing a drill and you start going down, through all the years you've been in this industry, what has been one of the biggest surprises you've come across while drilling?
While drilling, I don't know if it's a surprise as much as it is excitement, is when you take a kick. And kick means you hit a zone and it's a little more prolific than what you thought or geologists anticipated. That's the excitement. We drilled a couple of wells recently where that happened, and we had to manage that whole process while it was going on. I can't tell you where it was at. That's still
that's cool.
That's called being tight hole. We want to keep that quiet for now, but it was really exciting around here when that happens. And then it happened at Parsley a few times. We had that happen, and it is surprising when it happens, but it's exciting at the same time. But it can be dangerous, and so there's some safety protocols you have to put in place, and you kind of have to change. You do have to change your processes for what's going on location to ensure the safety of your workers as well. So it's super exciting, particularly when you see oil coming back to the surface.
I was going to say, is that the proverbial scene where you see a gusher?
No, you don't see that.
Okay.
Those were the days where they didn't manage it properly.
Okay.
So,
Got it.
Coming back like that. Yeah, it's exciting because, by and large, most formations have been discovered and they've been drilled into, and there's not a whole lot of prolific areas left. But every once in a while, you'll hit a zone that, for whatever reason, as many wells have been drilled in Texas, there's still those pockets in certain regions, and we've hit those a time or two, and recently we've hit two.
Nice. That's got to be fun.
Yeah, it's really exciting around here.
Have you ever gone to a site and found anything interesting that you didn't expect to find from an archaeological perspective?
We've seen some odd looking formations come back. We've actually seen chunks of rock come back, which is kind of odd to see instead of, that's always an odd thing to have happen. So you kind of wonder what's going on down hole. It's not very often. Usually you're drilling through that and it comes back up as just, hit formation, but every once in a while something odd like that will come to surface. But we have seen in shallower depths, just initially, where you'll see some seashells and things like that are coming back. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's incredible to see something like that. It's usually pretty shallow. It's probably within the first 1,000 feet. And that's rare. That's really rare. But I've seen it. At my ranch, I'm 2,400 feet above sea level, and I have seashells on the surface. I've actually found a couple of whole conches.
That's just incredible. Think about it, right? In West Texas.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible.
Pretty interesting.
But I've seen some dangerous things too. I've seen pipe go flying out of the hole.
Wow.
That was pretty wild. You see that pipe coming out of the ground, and that
causes that.
What's that?
What causes that?
Pressure. that was a situation where the pressure wasn't managed properly and everything came out. And it was fortunately the only thing that we had, the only injury we had a guy that broke his ankle, but I saw a joint of pipe sticking up out of the ground and I thought it was a telephone pole. It was in the middle of the night. So, and then there was pock marks, so to speak, all over around the location. It looked like it'd been bombed.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was not good. I saw one of our consultants, his vehicle was completely crushed by a joint pipe.
How do you get that under control?
It blew itself out, but we have BOPs, and the crew, when they finally quit running, they got the BOPs shut. They're called blowout preventers, and they shut it. So, yeah, that's where you manage pressure. But
yeah. Amazing. Well, I didn't know that there were multiple layers of that piping with the concrete barrier going down. So that's,
yeah.
And I think that's going to be news to everybody because, you don't typically hear about that.
And it's a regulatory requirement in every state. So, there's a lot of misnomers out in our society about oil and gas wells, and a lot of it is false or uneducated, and people just don't know.
What's going to happen in the next 2 years with fuel prices here in the States?
It's interesting when Trump put tariffs on certain nations, and every time, and you and I have talked about this, and Adam, of course, but he does something like that. You have to think about what's the underlying reasoning, or what is he doing? What's his approach? And so when he puts tariffs on a country like China, what does that do to them? That inhibits growth. If that inhibits growth, that inhibits their energy consumption. And if that inhibits energy consumption, what does that do to the price of oil? That sends it down. So, if he keeps putting tariffs, and he said he wanted to drive the price of oil down. If he can't get the backing of Saudi Arabia, and certainly, we're not going to drill, baby, drill. That's not what we do. He doesn't dictate the oil companies to drill, because the price of oil goes down. Why would we drill? It's not economic.
Can't make it.
Doesn't make sense. I mean, we have to make money too. So what does he do? He, even though he is applying tariffs for other reasons, but there is the alternative reason there too as well. It helps drive energy prices down because it creates a market for a lot of oil to be on the market, so to speak. So right now, oil inventories are pretty high, and they're going to continue to be high for the next couple of years. So I don't see the price of oil going up. People have said to me in the last couple of months, and particularly when he was elected, oh, this is good for your industry. Actually, it's not. Every time a Republican gets elected, they reduce regulatory constraints. If you reduce regulatory constraints, then people start drilling again, but then the price of oil goes down.
Flood the market, probably with supply. Yeah.
When Obama was in office, that was when we made the most money we've ever made in the history of our company. Oil went to $140 a barrel. And there were things that were involved there too, but still, typically we do better when a Democrat is in office, believe it.
For oil and gas.
Oil and gas.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. It's not $40 a barrel.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, somewhere we've got to find the spot where it all makes sense.
I
would like to see the strategic reserves get stockpiled beyond.
Right.
We've got to create a production, and because when you talk about our independence, while we have the energy here and while we're rich in energy sources, would be that oil, gas, or whatever, it is the strength in the power of our ability to sustain ourselves and, and keep the country moving, create a fighting force moving. I mean, all of those things rely on energy.
Yeah.
I don't know why we ever tap the strategic reserves. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's an act of desperation.
Yeah. And you got to refill it at some point. And at what point, when do you buy it back? Because you have to buy it back from the market.
Yeah.
But that's, it's probably a false approach. It's a short-term Band-Aid to a longer-term problem that I don't think is really, it's not good for our industry, and it's certainly not good for the protection of our nation either. That, but it worked. I mean, it drove prices down for a while.
Hey, I want to transition to our last topic, energy related, but I want to pivot to alternative energy, wind, solar, anything new on the horizon. What's your overall take on, well, first of all, what are the stats around how much energy is being created with alternative sources these days?
I'm not sure on the stats. I'm not well versed on that, but I do know that.
Let me pull it up. I think I can pull it up here while we're chatting. But go ahead, continue to tell me.
I know that those sources are very limited in terms of, for instance, wind. I have wind turbines all around my ranch, and they're not on me, but I see them. They're not very reliable in terms of the wind, and for this reason, about a year ago, they went through every wind turbine in my area, and I saw several cranes changing out the propellers on them, and they were putting a different pitch propeller on all of those. There wasn't enough wind. They weren't turning enough to produce enough energy. Okay. So they changed the pitch on them. And then, of course, during ice storms, and we don't get a whole lot of ice, but, when we had the Snowmageddon in 2021 and 2022, those things were shut down because ice on a propeller doesn't work very well.
Yep.
But also, they tend to wear out pretty quickly. And when I say quickly, in 10 years that they start having a lot of issues. So it's not a great source of energy. I mean, you have to put out so many of them, and I think they're a blight across the land. One of the ranches near me recently mowed down probably 1,000 acres of land and trees, and it was beautiful where this place was. The oak tree, as far as you can see, and now it's 1,000 acres of solar panels.
Wow, that's a lot of solar panels.
Yeah, and it looks like a lake. I had a friend who was with me one day as I was going down the road. He said, "Oh my goodness, there's a new lake there." I said, "No, those are solar panels."
Wow.
And here's another issue with those is they had to poison the ground for weed control. And then I saw a vehicle. I see it every once in a while. It's not a lot. He's got a spray rig on the back of it's a little Ford truck, and he's spraying those solar panels down, and it's a cleaner, and it drips onto the ground. And then where does that go? That goes down into your ground.
Yeah.
And so there's that. And so I'm not sure those are very reliable sources whatsoever. That's why I think natural gas is clean. It's plentiful. It's sustainable. It's a constant. It's not something that's relying on weather or sun. So I don't think that, obviously in Europe and in the UK, they're having issues with renewables. Yep. Seeing the results of that, it's hurting their nation, and they're looking for fossil fuels. They're trying to get back to gas.
Here are the current stats. Energy, U.S. electricity generation by source, United States. Renewables, wind, solar, hydro, biomass, geothermal, 20 to 22%. That's higher than I thought it would be. Nuclear, 18 to 19%. Lower than I thought it would be. Natural gas, 40%. Before this chat with you, I would have thought that would have been less, but after this chat with you, I'm not surprised by that at all. Right? Supports what you say about, the abundance of it. Coal still 17%.
I'm surprised by that because the number of coal plants, particularly here in Texas, that have been decommissioned. It's pretty bad.
This is a late 2023 number, by the way.
Yeah. And they're still decommissioning plants.
Yeah. I'm sure that, I'll see if I can pull up a historical look back on it. Petroleum and other, 1% to 2%. What would be the other?
You grew up in New York, so you still had heating oil in that region. We've never.
Oh yeah, you kidding? My gosh.
Yeah.
The oil truck would show. I grew up in an apartment building, 64 families. We had a boiler room, literally what it was called, and this boiler literally ran off of the oil. They'd pump it in through a giant hose through one of the lower windows. Giant tanks in the basement, in the boiler room, massive tanks, underground, pumping the oil. This boiler was, well, first of all, I was little back then, but I had access to it because my grandfather was the superintendent of the building. Vittorio, go put water in the boiler, right? So there was a sight glass at the very top of the boiler had to be, I don't know, I'm going to try to adjust it for when you're little, everything's massive. It had to be 20 feet wide. It had to be about 30 feet deep. And it was probably about 15 feet high. And its sole purpose was to boil water for two purposes. One, that's what people used to get hot water when they turned on their faucet. And two, in the winter, it generated steam through pipes, which went throughout the building, and it went to radiators, and we had steam heat. Whole place was steam. But this boiler, the oil would pump in, and the only thing that wasn't automatic back then, but it had later become automatic, was you had to manually put the water in that would boil. So there was a very skinny sight tube on the side of the boiler. And one of my jobs was, Vittorio, go downstairs and put a water in the boiler. And I would have to stand on this, turn the valve. You stand on the staircase and you wait until it was like this far from the top. Dude, this thing would take 20 minutes to fill. It was such a giant tank. And you see go sight glass, sight glass, sight glass, sight glass. All right, close enough. Turn it off. And that was it. And that would last a couple of days, even in the winter. It was a lot of water, and you'd burn the oil. Yeah. The oil would do that.
My high school was it was run off natural gas, but it had a boiler room, and our classrooms all had radiators out.
Yeah.
High schools had gone. Yeah. Everybody, like, you would hear a knocking noise.
Oh yeah, I hear the knocking big time.
But get back to your original question. I really think nuclear is probably another great renewable that we should look at. I mean, 3 Mile Island, they're trying to
bring it back online,
but they're recommissioning that. And I think I sent you and Adam an article about that. And I was surprised that they had maintained it so well. It's in fabulous shape, and I think nuclear is great. I mean, we need more of those. I think that it's clean and it's super safe.
Mm-hmm.
But and I think it's reliable. It's obviously going to be more reliable than solar or wind. But I'm not a tree hugger by any means, but I've seen some locales where those wind turbines have taken out numerous birds. The sandhill cranes come through West Texas every year, and it's amazing how many of those get slaughtered by wind turbines. It's just not a good thing.
No, well, we make decisions around the environment for the best and the worst of reasons.
Yeah,
but
a wind turbine in this place that got struck by lightning, and the wind turbine company never came to fix it.
Really,
the gearbox ruptured, and so he had a big oil spill on his land. And he said he called them and asked them what they were going to do about it, because it'd been sitting there and it's poisoning his ground. And the ground had died where the oil spilled from the gearbox. And they said, well, if you look at your wind turbine contract, we don't have to fix it. But it's still there. And they said it's not economic for us to repair it.
Do they have to remediate the issue?
No.
It's a rough one. Out in Moran, from Cisco to Moran, Highway 6, Cisco comes off of 20 here in Texas, and you bang go north from there and you go on 6. I've owned that property a couple of years now. And there was a range out there where there was a lot of wind. So if you go up toward Albany, which is at an elevation higher than Moran, you start driving back into Moran, at night you see the lights. You just see it lit up. Looks like there's a runway. I mean, it's unbelievable amount of lights. Well, now on 6, they must have made deals up and down from just not too far north of 20, all the way up until a few miles before Moran. There are so many windmills out there now. And, I just hope they're efficient because they're not aesthetically great. And I read up about all the things you discussed with the pitch. And if you watch Landman, you hear Billy Bob whacking off the stats, right? It was a good rant, right? About, oh my God, that little clip went viral. Like everybody who's against windmills took that as Bible, gospel, Oh, look at what Billy Bob says. Yeah. This amount of concrete, this amount of this amount of that, gearbox oil, this, that, your footprint to get back the enough energy from that thing is going to be 20 years. And, it's on and on and on. But, they're popping up all over the place. And have you ever been out to, what's the name of it? Palm Springs, California? Yeah. That's quite an oasis of windmills.
Yeah.
On the ride out there.
Great. But yeah, there is a lot of windmills. Yeah.
And more than I've ever seen just about anywhere. And they're all in the weirdest places. It's like there's no good planning about where they put these.
Right. Yeah.
They're just anywhere they can capture some wind, they pop these guys up.
Yeah. It's and that, there is a lot of fossil fuel used to build that infrastructure. So and maintain it too. There's I have a nephew that actually works on a crew that maintains those out in West Texas. And it's pretty incredible to listen to him talk about how inefficient they are and how much repair work goes into them. They're just not, they're not good.
Yeah. I did see a technology where, wind, but it wasn't turbines. And I'll send you, I don't know if I sent you this link. Basically a gyrating pole that did this.
Oh, I don't think you sent that to me.
And there's a gyroscope in it from the wind moving it like this, and it created some force and it spun. So it's able to generate energy from vibrating in the wind like that without the big propeller spinning. I'll find it and I'll send it to you again. It was pretty neat. I don't know if that's...
I haven't seen it. Yeah.
I don't know if it's in production or it's something that's being developed. It was, it was pretty neat. It was actually really neat. I have a friend, by the way, who about 2 years ago bought, I think like 100 to 150 acres in northwest Texas, like right up by the Oklahoma border up there. And, he's like, I want to be energy independent up here. So he put in his own solar farm, not panels on the roof, like an acre, like a lot for a residential guy. And he has it all backhauled to 8 of those Tesla batteries. And he basically told me if he's got full power on all of those batteries, he's got about 6,000 square foot house on that property. He can run the entire property with everything, full air or full heat, everything, 100% run it for a day on a quarter of all of the batteries.
Wow.
And he can generate on a cloudy day enough power to push those batteries up to full, about half full. And so he's creating double what he uses. And on a sunny day, obviously his ability to store that is significantly greater. But, he's like, I'm going solar up here. And let me send you some pictures. Dude, he looks like he's got a commercial operation up there. This is my friend Tony, but this is how Tony does life. Yeah. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And so he's like, I'm not messing around up here. I want to be off the grid.
Yeah. And thought that the power provider could actually buy that back from you. I know if you have your own wind turbine, they can buy that back, or they're actually forced to.
Yeah. Well, he said as of the day that was up and running, he's using zero electricity from the commercial sources.
That's great.
Zero. He's completely running this. And he said, I've got a pace here where half of my batteries can go dead and I still can create enough. So he's got enough there where a lot has to go bad before he's not producing enough. He goes, and, if it gets real bad, I keep the AC off, or I only do one zone of the house, but he said for the foreseeable future, I'm off the grid. I'm completely self-sufficient. He's got bonded Starlink out there. So he's got 3 units of Starlink, and you can aggregate those. So you can bond that. So do the Starlink math and multiply it times 3. So he's got pretty robust connectivity out there.
You can do that.
You can bond it. They do it it's like SD-WAN technology, but you can bond these multiple connections. And as long as you want to pay the monthly on it, put as many as you want up there. And so he's aggregating that. And he's loving it.
Have Starlink now. That's just the way to go. It's just
yeah.
I
have Starlink out in Moran, but I want to get one of those little mobile guys.
Yeah.
Where you can just take it, travel with it, do whatever you want to do. But truth be told is, this thing right here, the 5G hotspot on it, it works just fine. Yeah. I was just on the road, and where I couldn't connect to Wi-Fi, that thing was fine. Connect to 5G.
Yeah.
I was in Maui for 5 nights. I brought my son. They've got pretty good infrastructure there.
Yeah.
They got good infrastructure. They've got a lot of transatlantic lines going there. So not transatlantic, but underwater line. Transatlantic goes to Europe, but they've got, they're piped into California and just other countries. And so they've laid this, decades ago. And so even before they had satellite capability, thinking, what's this whole place run on Starlink? 5G's cranking out there. It's all coming. I mean, that's the cool thing about being in Hawaii. You feel stateside, but you are in the middle of nowhere. It's pretty.
Been to Hawaii twice, and it was, and that's a small island. It's really small. You could drive one side to the other in an hour.
But, wow.
I didn't have any issues getting out there. The infrastructure really good. Beautiful place.
Cool. Hey, Paul. Thank you so much for the layman's education tonight. I think it's neat. I think it's a hot topic, and I think the way we discussed it tonight will give everybody a, Energy 101, learn a little bit about how to drill, learn a little bit about the makeup of our energy sources, learn about how there's a lot of cool things I think you're going to be surprised to find out. Yeah. How far you go down, how the wells have been built, what the safety precautions are. So thanks for sharing that with us tonight. Absolutely. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's always good to see you too.
Yeah, you too, man. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you too.
Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.